just to wrap up the rest of the fan headers on the motherboard, just before we turn the case around and take a look at that, we have the OPT header driving the pump for the CPU block, water block, and then we have fan header number 3 driving the exhaust fans on the bottom, but that extension is tucked in up front as well. So that should complete the tour of the backside. We'll turn this around and take a look at the other side of the case. Now we have the front of the case, the series part of the case. We have a few connections here we'll talk about in just a minute. But let's run through the major setup here. We decided to put the 240 radiator up front. Seemed to work best. We've got that being fed with some Enermax cluster fans. Again, they seem to push quite a bit of air through there. The temperatures running currently on the initial setup are actually quite good. CPU is staying in the 28 to 30 degrees centigrade in idle, so that's quite good. Even pushing it through some of the stress tests at this point in time, we're not getting anything much higher than 48 to 52, but we'll take a look at that when we look at the test later on. We have it's a all-in-one cooler for the CPU. It's the Captain 240 from Deep Cool. There was some concern over this particular model. If you look at the internet, particularly in I think it's the Newegg site, there's quite a few folks saying that this particular block tends to pop this glass tube at the bottom here and leak all over the place. I reached out to Deep Cool to ask them what the situation was, because if you do the math based on the responses online, it looks like you have a 15% risk chance of this unit, if you own one, leaking. So I challenged them with that. They requested the serial number on this particular unit. I sent that to them. They came back to me, and quite quickly, by the way. In fact, the customer service is amazingly responsive. I would say every time I've reached out to them via email, Deep Cool has come back to me clearly within 2 hours in each case, which was amazing. Continues to be amazing to me. So they must have people in China manning the phones 24 hours a day. Nevertheless, they came back and they said there's been no reports to them of failures of this particular lot run. So I've decided to trust in them, and they've assured me they will stand behind the product. And from all indications, not only do they stand behind the product, but any damages that might occur. So I'm trusting in them that I will not have any problems with this. The current plan is we'll leave the AOI in place for 6 to 12 months, and then we'll upgrade it. Either right now we're considering a heat killer or something along those lines, and we'll go into full custom loop. Nevertheless, for our first stage of ice, we're running all-in-ones. In this case, a 240 Captain, and as you can see, we are connected. It's working quite well, and we'll talk a little bit about what the next steps are in a minute. So in addition to that, we have our EVGA hybrid 1080 card in place. We've done a little custom painting on the radiator because it comes black only, and it was a bit dark, so we wanted to lighten things up. So we gave it a little paint job, and then we reached out here to Cable Mod and got some of these white sleevings for that, which I think works fairly well with this build. We have that hooked up, as I mentioned before. This fan, which is cooling the radiator for the video card, pulling air in, pushing it through. It's pretty effective and efficient. I have it running off of in this case, the number 1, I think, fan header, and it is running off of a temperature zone which is located right here at the bottom of the card. It's set fairly aggressively because I want to get a jump on the fan curve ahead of any significant increase in temperature. So we're running a fairly aggressive fan curve. I'm not so concerned with noise at this point, and as we get used to knowing each other, getting to know each other, perhaps we'll pull back on that. But for a place to start, it's fairly aggressive, running off a temperature sensor that's embedded in the motherboard at this location here. We have, as I mentioned previously, we've got the 2 8-pin power PCI connections coming in from the power from the front. We have that right now a bit hidden within this big white sleeve. I like that look. It eliminates some of the sense of clutter, and as we move forward, I may do the same thing for this front connection for the 3.0 USBs, which is a little bit obnoxious at this point, and also for the 24-pin. Even though we're considering, or we're going to do a custom 24-pin cable, I like the bundling effect, and I'm not so keen on the current edition of coming out with a flat 24-pin, but we'll see how that works later. So we have that connection. As I mentioned, you can't really see it, but up on top we have our 8-pin coming to power the CPU. So let's move on. Next we have our 16 gigs of memory. It's also with white LEDs. In this particular case, these are the Super Lucy's from Gill, and the white LEDs also act as a temperature monitor for the memory chips, and so they have a breathing scheme, and the slower they breathe indicates the cooler that the memory chips are, and the faster they breathe, obviously things are heating up.